Hello and welcome to Camp Xtras. The 90s was full of platforming mascot games, and the PS1 was no exception to that craze. In the sea of greats like Spyro and Crash sits Croc, Argonaut Games' answer to the genre. I played through it recently, so let me give you some history and a review. All footage was captured off of a PS1, and let's hop right into the history of this game. In the early 90s, Argonaut Games was in a hot streak for Nintendo. They helped develop the Super FX chip for their Super Nintendo system, which enabled better graphics and 3D capabilities on that console. For that, they would create one of the most notable Nintendo franchises, Star Fox, in 1993. And they would also later go on to make Stunt Racer FX the following year. It's at this point that the development team was interested in taking their 3D style to the platforming genre. They made a demo featuring Yoshi and presented it to Nintendo, which turned it down because they already had a similar project, which, Super Mario 64, would be announced just a little bit after that. Well, shortly after this, the team received the Saturn dev kit and got to work on their own character for a platformer. Starting off as an edgy, cigar-chomping crocodile, the character would be made cuter, and the team would work within the limitations of the Saturn and PlayStation hardware. They would work on the game based on 3D blocks and rooms, as they felt they couldn't create large open spaces like in Mario 64. They would also try to make it as simple as possible and make the game design easy to understand, knowing your goal as soon as you entered a room, which they took a lot of inspiration from Yoshi's Island. After selling the game around to various publishers, Fox Interactive would pick it up, planning on making it their first original game, and had wished that it would break into other media such as animated shows. The game was built upon both consoles' D-pads and the PC's arrow keys, so the movement was tank-like, similar to Tomb Raider. Well, the PlayStation analog controller would actually become available right before this game's release, and they actually implemented support before this game came out, though they didn't have a lot of time to mess around with it. Croc Legend of Gobos would make it to the PlayStation on September 29th, 1997, and would release on the Saturn in November, with a PC release in 1998. I've had this greatest hits release for a while. See, when I was a kid, I loved Home Alone 3, and please don't judge me. I was a kid and I'd play this tape all the time, and it had a Croc trailer on it, and I always thought it looked so cool. I never got it, but Croc kinda stayed in my mind, and I eventually picked it up as an adult, and I never got around to playing it. So recently I played through it, and let me tell you about it, starting with the plot. The plot for Croc is quite simple when looking at it from the game's perspective, instead of the manual. Here, a little baby crocodile rolls up to the shore like Moses. Here, the Gobos find him and adopt him. Croc eventually grows up, but then Baron Dante invades the Gobos' land, kidnapping them, but Croc is kept safe, though he decides to track down and destroy Dante while saving the Gobos along the way. Read the manual and you are in for an even wilder ride. This manual feels like it was just given to someone who knew nothing about the game but decided to mess around a bit. It pretty much tells the same story, but you get more Gobos lore, like how they love to stick kitchen utensils down their pants, and they take that very seriously. They also talk about how the Gobos aren't smart because they tried to get them into college, but it didn't really work out. And it also gives you various other nicknames that Croc had in his lifetime, and it goes on for a long time with plenty of paragraphs and a plot that takes up 5 pages. Yet it's all pretty unnecessary when the basic element is that you are a newcomer to this land and you need to save the Gobos. No flash or anything like that, just enough for you to understand where you're going and why you're doing it. It's cute enough to match a cartoony aesthetic, made in this era that feels like a nice nostalgic fix today. Something simple to just turn off your brain and hop around with, and I really can't complain about that. Croc is an early platformer, and with that comes a lot of growing pains in getting that genre right. Sure, Super Mario 64 had already come out at this point, but this game was in production before that one. I will give the biggest positive right up front. The level design is really neat. I read that some, back in the day, didn't like the closed-off design here. Croc developers opted for a closed-off feel over open planes due to console limitations, yet I think that's a strength here. Each level you enter into is segmented into rooms. Your overall goal is to reach the end, but along the way there are various collectibles to grab, and those are just for checking off lists and getting secret levels. You can beat this game just by reaching the end, yet every room offers some sort of challenge, where one might have you jumping on high platforms, another might have you running in the dark. You enter a room with one clear goal in mind, and you set out to do it. It gives this game less exploration and more of a challenge feel. You need to master this room, and then you feel rewarded, and you move on in the level. Something about moving from task to task like this helped keep the energy strong, with many levels throwing something new at you, but allowing you to feel rewarded the whole time. It's simplistic, but in a way I enjoy. There are not a million things for you to get or attempt to do. You just beat a section of the level, and that simplicity is a little relaxing. Though the controls would not allow me to relax. This game can be miserable to control at times. Croc has tanky D-pad based controls, and it's extremely rigid. The feel of jumping never quite feels right, and it results in many missed jumps because of its rigidity. It doesn't help that there is no leeway in platforming. There's a lot of games that allow you to hang off the side just enough so you can still land. This game asks you to hit dead on or you're out of there. Something that can't be helped when swapping to analog controls, which I can't recommend. It's way too slippery. A turn will make you go way more than you expect, and this leads to a lot of falls and frustration. Early levels are more entertaining because there's more room for error, but the later levels have long sections with precision at every point of the way, and then with bad controls, you have miserable levels. I do like that this game does have a Sonic-styled crystal system where you collect crystals, and if you get hit, you lose them and then you can pick them up again. You're gonna need this because the respawning on enemies is absolutely relentless. I'm talking seconds after killing them, they'll come back, and I couldn't stand when you needed to precisely navigate platforms, and then on top of that, you have an enemy that just respawned behind you just a few seconds after killing them and ruining your run. It may seem like I hate Croc, and I really don't. It's such a mix of some levels being fun and playing to the strengths of this game, yet there's other levels that feel unplay-tested and offer a challenge that isn't really fun, it's just tedious. Throwing enemies that respawn too quickly at you, and platforms that offer no room for error. There are some challenges that hit this balance, and I love the level design there. I also love that there's a button for Croc to move 180 degrees the other way. Yet overall, I think the controls bring this game down a lot. Croc does at least get its look and sound down. The style of this PS1 game scratches a feeling I absolutely love. The segmented look of the levels give the levels a nice boxy design, and it feels like a tiny little labyrinth, designed in ways that are nooks or new areas to climb into. It has that patented wobble of the PS1, yet it all looks solid here. The bright color on a lot of the levels really set the world of Croc up and settles you into something cute. Though later levels drop the surrounded look for more black empty pits with platforms floating in space, yet I didn't mind this either, as this added a scarier challenge. There are multiple themed areas full of secrets and new enemies to encounter along the way. The visual identity is strong and feels like a nice Saturday morning cartoon, which can be seen here on Croc, who looks similar to Yoshi, since he's a green reptile, but the cutesiness is a little different with large googly eyes and a tooth sticking out. He feels like a 90s game character, very quintessential, and one that as a kid I remember seeing and loving, and I still think he's cute today. The sound design certainly helps with that too, as this guy talks a ton. He throws out yazoos and yippies with every jump. Most of the time this would annoy me, but here it's used enough to give this guy character and not be too annoying. Honestly, he's overbearingly cute. But with Croc, I'm cool with that. On top of that, there's a bunch of cartoony noises here and enemies that make cutesy sounds. The game certainly captures a mood with the sound effects, and the music does that too. The drums are light and airy and everything is so upbeat. It's all so cheery and it's hard to not love the world set up here. Yet my favorite song is definitely the underwater one. This game offers a lot of fun tunes, and it makes for a soundtrack that's worth listening to outside of this game. Croc has a lot of things going for it, and I understand those who are nostalgic for it. It's very cute, and I love the look of this PS1 game. Its segmented, boxy style and core gameplay design is all there. The way rooms are challenges that can be completed without an overarching goal is simplistic and unique. Yet the controls fail this game. It makes this game far too rigid and platforming a chore for most of this game, causing this game to be more frustrating than fun. I do think it's somewhat fun and has a charm to it, it just could have been way better. On my ranking list of PS1 games reviewed here on the channel, Croc will enter in at number 5 of 9. Lilo and Stitch is worse because even if the controls are better, I admire Croc's originality in design better than Lilo and Stitch, and it offers something more unique. Yet V-Rally is far more entertaining in my eyes, offering a better feel for a game and is far more replayable. Looking through the reviews of Croc, Croc did fairly well critically. IGN gave it an 8 out of 10, saying that it was derivative of other platformers, but they enjoyed the controls and felt the look of the game was nice. Electronic Gaming Monthly gave it 4 scores of 7.5, all of them drawing comparisons to Mario 64, but all were able to get some fun out of this cute title. Though GameSpot was on the lower end, giving it a 5.8, once again saying it ripped from Mario 64 and they hated the camera and controls. All around, they did say it had charm though. Croc would go on to be a commercial success afterward, having sold over 2 million copies by 1999. It would go on to get a greatest hits release, signifying that it was a major success, and of course this was a good thing for Argonaut and Fox Interactive. Things were looking up for this crocodile, with things like a cartoon possibly in the works, and a sequel which already was teased in the Saturn version's manual, which this is all a story for the next time when we cover Croc 2. Nowadays there is a remake of this game, and the nostalgia for this title is strong. You look in places like YouTube comments or forums, and you will see comments on how Croc was people's childhoods. A cute platformer that worked well for many, though there is definitely those out there that didn't love it. With over 4,000 plays on the user aggregate website backlogged, it only holds a 2.9 out of 5, with many complaining about the controls, but many loving the look. Yet I want to hear from you. Did you love this game? Did you hate this game? Let me know in the comments. I really want to hear from you because everybody's opinion is important. Leave a like on this review if you enjoyed it, subscribe to keep up with more videos like this, and check out my main channel, Camp Xbox, where I just cover Xbox games. And I'll see you here next time at Camp Xtras.